day, everybody, and welcome back to Pretend World's Real People. As always, I'm Tyler, and recovering from a very long and busy week of self-tape submissions. No in-person auditions, which I know it's slightly coming back, but a lot of self-tapes. It's just, every single day it's just been busy, crack full of them. So I called my friends to see what was going on. Some of them in LA, some of them in Colorado, some in Georgia, and everybody is so busy. So I just want to say break a leg to all of you who are auditioning, who are going in for callbacks, who booked the job. Like, congrats. It just seems like, we're getting really, really busy. So fingers crossed that something happens and maybe I'll have to record one of these episodes in another state in the next few weeks. Outside of that, nothing crazy. I did try a peach pizza recently, which was insanely good. So for you foodies out there, if you're ever in Louisville, Colorado, go to 12 Degree Brewing. I think the pizza's seasonal, so go before go before November and try that pizza. It's absolutely amazing. Anyway, let's get right into this week's guest. I grew up watching this amazing character actor in projects that I was probably a little too young to watch, but absolutely adored them. You've seen him in films like Garden State, The Last Kiss, Dukes of Hazzard, or even Pathology. If you are a horror fan like myself, that is one of my favorites. You may have seen him in Scrubs, Home Before Dark, Psych, House, or the most recent Houdini and Doyle. I'm, of course, talking about Michael Weston, who is an absolutely fantastic character actor who grew up with his sights set on sports rather than theater, but ended up going to college to pursue a theater degree in their theater program, and has since built an amazingly prolific career on both stage and screen. And he has a project coming up with his former pathology director that he hints about as well that I can't wait to see. So let's get right to it. Let's sit down and chat with the lovely Michael Weston.
Hey there, everyone. My name is Michael Weston. I am an actor. I am a writer, and I'm producing a whole film. So I guess I'll call myself a producer. I'm an amateur producer.
Oh no! When did that happen?
Just now, I'm about to go do a film with an old friend and director of mine in Germany. This guy, Mark Schullerman. We did Pathology together, and so he found a script, and we've been working on it a little bit, and we're going to shoot in September, we just got our funding, so I'm pretty pumped about it.
Oh man, that's all. I will say, like, Pathology was the first thing I ever saw you in. So
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah,
that's so funny.
anytime I'm
Hey,
playing somebody like in the medical field and relatively evil, I always
yeah,
go
for
for a
off
little
his
bit of,
part.
yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, man.
But I do want to start, man. Like, we'll get to that for sure. But I want to
Sure.
see, like, how you got into this. How did you become an actor? What was it? Was it something you kind of
Yeah,
realized
well,
at a younger age?
my father is an actor. His name is John Rubenstein, and so I sort of grew up around the business a lot, and it was never really for me. I mean, as a kid, and I wasn't really interested in it. I played sports mostly, and I loved that. And then at some point, I think I was in high school, and I think my dean was I was up to no good. I was mischievous. I was creating trouble, and he was like, "Will you please do something with yourself? Get in." So he sort of strong armed me into the school play. Um, and then in that process, I just realized I loved it. I loved doing theater. Theater was sort of where I came from in it. I've been around the theater a lot. My dad is a really great theater actor. He was like the original Pippin years
Oh
and years
wow.
ago, and he won a Tony Award for Children of a Lesser God, the play, the original of that. So I'd been in the wings of a theater for a lot of my life, and I love the sort of team aspect of it. That you're It's like a sports team. It was like I played a lot of baseball, soccer as a kid, and whatever. And what I loved about it is we were on this team, and it was this incredible collaboration between all of you guys, and you went for the victory. And so the thing with like getting in a play, it felt similar, except maybe deeper. Maybe you got to it was a different kind of person involved in it, and you got to play these great characters, and yet you were in the end sort of working toward a goal together, and it required everyone on all different levels, all different, different crafts and experiences and ages and everything to make it all work. And I love that process. I love somehow finding like all the different cogs and all the different rhythms of all these different people, and somehow herding them onto the same page to make something really, really wonderful. The process of that, and then the excitement of sort of seeing how it all pans out when you actually get it in front of folks. So
Well,
that's
so
how
I
I got
mean,
into it. I was in it, and and then I sort of fell in love with it through that, and I met some of my best friends, and I ended up going to Northwestern, and doing their theater program there in Chicago. Um, and then I still wasn't sure I wanted to do it, and that I was going to work in kitchens. I love like same for the same reason. I love working like in a kitchen, same sort of collaborative science and art, and then I ended up just getting I got a little play in New York, and I went up to Williamstown Theater Festival is what I did actually, and I met some of my, again, best friends of today, wonderful actors, and had some incredible opportunities, and got my first agent, and ended up getting a little play, um, and then started my career in New York, sort of bartending, and at the same time going down for auditions and stuff. And it was great. It was a great time to be in New York, and I love the thrill of it all.
yeah, that's quite the journey to go from sports to theater. I mean, speaking of the kitchen part of it, was there any thought about maybe changing your major to the culinary arts while you're at
I mean,
Northwestern?
there wasn't I sort of arrived in college, and I didn't really know what I wasn't really prepared. You had to sort of declare yourself when you set foot, and I was
Uh,
in there, and I was like, oh, I guess acting. So I was doing a lot of writing, I was doing acting, but I never felt that it was like binding. I don't think I've ever used my BS, which is really my degree. So, except maybe right now. No, so it was like, it was all like, it was just, I didn't quite get it yet. And I didn't feel like until I got back to New York, and I tried kitchens, and I loved it, and it remains something that I do a lot of today, and is sort of a side passion, but mostly just cooking for my kids, let's be honest.
yeah.
But side passion. Yeah, but yeah, no, it wasn't something I actually I fell deeply in love with this whole crazy business, and I haven't really looked back since then.
Thankfully, because I mean,
Yeah.
you've done a hell of a lot, and it's odd with that. I mean, did your father have any reservations for you going down that path, or was he pretty
Not
supportive?
really. I mean, he's his own thing, and he's always been very supportive. Like, he was great. My mom was an actress too, actually.
Oh wow.
She was. If you ever look up an old movie called The Fortune Cookie, it was like Billy Wilder, Walter
Fortune cookie.
Matthau, um, Jack Lemmon, and she's like the sort of like blonde bombshell in it, smoking cigarettes. It's really weird to say about your mom, but she is. And so she was in that movie, and she's a wonderful actress of her own right, and sort of gave it up. It wasn't really the business of it really wore her down, and I think it, as it does to many people, it can be a very unrelenting kind of thing, and especially for women in that time, it wasn't they didn't have a sort of leg to stand on in a certain way. The guys were sort of a real, cool club, and I think that was hard for her. So anyway, that's she found her way out of it, but she remains a sort of wonderful actress. And we used to, like, when I was in New York, I was like a bike messenger slash bartender. I was doing 10 jobs at once, and I would like ride my bike with my sides up and get my old mom, and we'd get a coffee, and we'd go down to the Central Park, and we'd like sit on a bench, and she'd run lines with me, and we look like two crazy people, and then I'd go and try and book a gig.
That's so cool, though. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
I
awesome.
mean,
And she remained, I mean, honestly, to this day, she's now out here in LA, and still she's like, if you need someone to run lines with you, and she's great. So, everything is like self tapes these days. So if I can get her ass up these stairs here, she'll run a couple
yeah.
auditions with me.
Can you be here in 20 minutes? I have an
Yeah,
HBO self tape to do.
yeah,
that's
funny.
That's a great memory though to have.
Yeah.
Was she your, like, good luck charm for a little bit while you were running lines and auditioning
Yeah,
and
I
stuff?
mean, it's funny because those she especially came from that very old world of acting, like the Sandy Meisner. Like she was with like Robert Duvall and all those guys in Sanford
Holy
Meis with
shit.
Sanford Meisner in those sort of hallowed classes, Um, and so she has great stories about it all, and she learned from all those guys, and she was sort of on par with all of them in her own, and so she has great wisdom in that stuff, and so she always came from a really great place, and it was really helpful to me, just sort of steering me around and giving me some ideas and just a different take on it, from that sort of old world acting where there were some real greats.
Yeah, and I'm sure you hung on to a lot of that growing up in a house of that sort. You're bound to take some of that with you, right?
Yeah, I mean, you do. It's weird. I mean, it was never impressed upon me like this is what we do in this family. It was never like that. They were very sort of ethereal artist types, and my dad, I mean, and my dad was a very different kind of guy. He just did his craft, and that was it. But it didn't carry over into our lives a lot, so there wasn't a lot of discussion about it. It was never like acting is the greatest. It was like my dad actually his he's like if you can do anything else with your life, do it. This is what he said. It always was this thing. Just do it because, but if you can't and you really love this in that way, then by all means do it because it's a beautiful ride. If you don't mind all the, ups and downs of it and the peculiarities of it,
Yeah.
it's a weird business. It makes you do weird things and it creates weird challenges in your life that you wouldn't have in say another job, a 9 to 5.
Oh yeah, I feel like socially actors are always a little off with people.
Probably
You
have to
know?
be in some way, just whether it's your ego or how you just approach things or just like, I think for all actors in a very healthy way, like a healthy ego is you have to be so resilient to all the different things that come at you in so many different ways. Like, people won't say, "Yeah, you're too ugly for this" in most jobs. But in this, they will. And you have to be like, "Oh, okay. Well, all right." Or they won't say, "You need to put on this much muscle or lose this much weight." Or they won't say, "You should have worn that dress or these shoes." I mean, all that stuff that, a lot of people won't really deal with. And a lot of, and, every profession has its thing, but in this, it becomes very sort of personal. And I think that you have to be very good at sort of kung fuing that out of your way so you can just see clearly what you're actually doing and not let it like, hurt your feelings and get you down or whatever.
Yeah. Was there anything like that for you when you were kind of out of college? You were bartending, you were auditioning. Was there anything that maybe was, it might be TMI, but was brought up about you personally that
I
you
mean,
thought, well, that's
constantly.
not,
I mean,
you
I
know?
think I've always sort of played somewhere along a line of, character actor, leading man sort of thing. I had that sort of throughout my career. And like, I did a part and it will suddenly define what you are. And you have to, I did 6 Feet Under, which I adore. And it was a great working experience and a really fun ride, the whole thing. But it suddenly sort of defines you in a certain way, and you have to wiggle your way out of that and say, hey, wait, but before that I was this guy. And then I just think, personally, with every audition, at least for me, you put your heart and your soul into it, and I mean, if you love it and if you can. And I think that it's hard to just on a daily basis, whatever that is, whenever you're sort of getting your auditions, and even if not, if you have one a month, it can sometimes become even more, valuable. I remember in the sort of beginning of my career, I'd get an audition, and I put everything I had into it. It was everything to me, and I wanted it so badly, and I just wanted to do well, and I wanted to get my foot in the door and all that stuff. So when the stakes are that high, it can rattle you, or you can allow that stuff to really, those opportunities are so precious that they can affect you, and you have to somehow build I feel like an actor, you know all of it is sort of building muscle. Even if you're at the top of your game and you're the A list and everyone's giving you stuff, you're building different muscles, but you're finding ways to sort of remain focused, centered, open, vulnerable, and that you sort of are always working on your craft despite all the noise. And to me, that's sort of always what it's about. And at different parts in my career with ups and downs like that, it's been a different kind of stuff that you're working with, but I'm always still focused on that. I'm always still trying to be like, all right, let's get all that other shit out of the way and let's see if I can just focus on what I love and care about and get all that other stuff in my head or outside of it out.
Yeah. I mean, I usually ask this later on in the episodes, but is there something that helps you decompress? I know you have what, like 3 kids, so
Yeah,
there's a
I
lot
have
of
2 kids.
stimulation.
Yes, but um, yes, decompress. I mean, that's such a it depends. I mean, always for me, it was always sports and sort of like something physical, just that gets my mind out of whatever that is, just to like unlatch from whatever it's sort of like clicking behind it, or I can't get my head off of, or you know, especially if I'm wait. I always found like waiting for a job, you do an audition, and for me, like being in the mix of the one or two people that they like, and you're sort of waiting to see if that's going to happen. I find that excruciating. And so for me, it was always like, yeah, writing helped. I love writing, and that would get throwing yourself into something else was always great. Kids are that for everything, but I mean they're front and center. So now I'm just looking for the scraps around that life. Um, and working out, and I used to play soccer, and just whatever I pick up, basketball, any of those things I always found really helpful to just get you out of this world for a little while,
Yeah.
and put your head into something else.
Yeah. I'm curious, what was your first official, like, booking in New York where you thought, "Okay, like,
Um,
train's moving."
yeah, let's see. Well, I mean, going up to Williamstown was a big deal, just because it was the first really professional thing that I did. I did one episode of a Cosby Mysteries, that way back, and I remember I was terrified. I had like 2 lines. I couldn't remember my lines, and Bill Cosby was there, and yes, he was hitting on some young woman in the aisle of the thing, and it was all just like there's
Wow.
all just too much stuff happening, and I was like, holy shit, I'm not ready. And I think I was in college then. I think I was like
Mhm.
junior in college. And then after that, I went up to Williamstown, and that was I sort of beat the streets of New York is what I did first, doing like backstage and all that stuff. Like I would just like, run my picture around to agents, and I would go and audition in these weird little sort of New York Manhattan holes, like on the far west side in some decrepit theater, and you'd be like, "Hey, la da 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 da," and show them your stuff, and they'd be like, and I did a couple of those like little plays and stuff like that, which were great and fun, and you sort of are always building your tool set. But then I did Williamstown, and that was the first time I think that I personally had been amongst so many professionals, like wonderful actors, like just people that you love and admire, and on so many different levels, like old ones and young ones, um and we all get to work together and sort of live together. And we're up at this sort of it's like a little theater oasis up in the Berkshires there, like up near Williams College. And it was just great, and I met so many just other young actors up there too that remain my friends, like Catherine Hahn, who went to school with me and was in my class, was up there. And her wonderful husband, Ethan Sandler, is a writer and wonderful actor. And Charlie Day was up there, and Jimmy Simpson was up there, and like just a lot of my peers who I love and admire and are still friends today. So you're working amongst all these other just great people, and they all find their way into the business, and so that was a great beginning for me just to be a part of that. Um, and then I did. They had something up there. It was like a little like musical night, and Sam Cohen, who was a sort of famous old agent at ICM, came up. He has since passed, but he was right on the sort of cusp of being like he was the old guard. He was like the number one agent back in the day, and very sort of gruff, intimidating, odd fella. used to like sort of like chew paper while he like talked to you and like sort of spit it around. That's what I remember from my
What?
first meeting with him. He called me in his office and he was like, and after that song and some little part in a play, um, and yeah, and he said, "Hey, you want to be with ICM?" And I was like, "Yep." And and that was it. That's where I had a great couple of like young agents there, and that's where my career started. Got me out on my first sort of auditions, and then I did a little off Broadway play with written by David Marshall Grant, and it was it was just with a bunch of great New York actors and now a lot of great writers and stuff. And we did a little play in a tiny little like 70-seat theater, and it got picked up by Daryl Roth, who runs that big theater downtown at Union Square, um, and some other wonderful producers. And we did that play for 6 months, and it was off of that play that I think Nora Ephron came and saw me in that play, and then later called me up and was like, "Hey, I'm doing this movie with John Travolta," and that's how I got a part in Lucky Numbers, which was a sort of the biggest film I got, and all that was in a. I was doing other little indies and stuff along the way, um, but that's how that sort of started for me, I think. Oh, and I did one thing called Getting to Know You, which was the first little movie I did in Sundance, and it was a similar thing. I was in New York, and the director Lisanne Schuyler was this wonderful director, and that's where I met Zach Braff. Zach and I did that movie together with Heather Matarazzo, who was like the sort of indie queen of the time. And and it was a great little movie, and it got into Sundance, and that was sort of my first. It was all sort of happening around the same time, and 1999 or something like that, and it was great. I got introduced to Sundance, and I got my sort of first little movie under my belt, and that was all in the indie New York theater sort of days. There's a lot of that going on there, and it all sort of overlapped.
It very it very much seems like that transient actor story of, the 90s where you just start meeting people and working with people,
Yeah.
and they just like you guys could sort of like carry each other into different projects. That must have
Yeah,
been
I mean,
so
that
much
was
fun.
what I mean, I remember Zach and I moved back out to LA, like, exactly right after that. We sort of kept in touch after the movie, but then he called me up when he got to LA, and he had just done a Greg Berlanti film, who was someone that I knew also from college, who was, like, my freshman, a peer advisor. We were both kids, and so was Greg at the time. And I remember we were at like Burger King or some shit, and we were sitting there, and he was like, a little older than me, and telling me about what it's like to be in the theater department at Northwestern. So, yeah, I know there's all those little overlaps. So he was doing that, and I was in LA, and Zach and I ended up being roommates together before either one of us really had a career. And we found a place together, and we lived together for like 4 years, right as he was getting Scrubs and I was doing some movies, and we were yeah, it was just like that. We were sort of doing stuff, and that's how I ended up being in Garden State and all that other stuff.
Do you guys ever sit down at, say, like a local Burger King in LA and just reminisce on being in college, talking about
Yeah,
just,
I mean, well, like, I didn't know Zach in college at all. That was Greg Berlanti, and
or
like,
yeah,
I've seen him from time to time out here, and he's doing, always 18 million projects. Um, but Zach and I were great friends for a very long time, and we were, especially at that sort of young part of our career, um, it was great. We were sort of growing up in LA in a different way out here, and learning a lot about the business and ourselves as actors and stuff.
yeah. And in that time, were you still writing your own stuff too, just to have an
Yeah,
outlet?
I always wrote a lot, and I had never really focused on it. It's still sort of for the first time in my life, I'm doing that now, where, I acting had always sort of just continued, and it's really hard for me, at least, to multitask. I'm not really good at it. So when I was acting, and it was hard for me to sort of pick it up and drop it and pick it up and drop it. And so I've been writing all this. I have several scripts that I've been writing over these years, and I just have been waiting for the sort of window, after kids and all that stuff, to sort of find just 8 seconds to think my own thoughts and push these scripts that I really love forward. And that's happening right now, and it's actually really exciting. So
I
hopefully
won't ask
come back
you
one
for
day soon.
specifics, just
Yeah. Oh,
for
you
writing
can.
safety.
Sure.
But is there a genre you like writing, or do you like writing a little bit of
I
everything?
love. I mean, I love funny films. I love like comedies that also are, that pack a wallop, that have something in them that's very human, and that they're not just. I love comedies that are just, silliness, but that's not necessarily what I'd write. So yeah, I think, I have a romantic comedy. I have sort of a action comedy, and then a very sort of insular family story that's also sort of, I'd say like a dark comedy. I mean, they're all. I don't know how to. I used to. I always loved like Chekhov and stuff like that, because I think that's a real inspiration for me in writing, because it was always very real, and it was always really funny, but it was based in just truth, just based in like all of our weird human foibles. And I think that stuff, those are the films I love the most, that get me the most.
I love talking to people who just love to write for the sake of it, but also want to make their own projects to
Yeah.
see what their process is like writing it. Or you're a busy family man who's also you have a career. So are you putting movie ideas or scene ideas in the notes in your phone, or doing a quick video memo? Do you write it on a napkin? Like what's your
Oh
weird
man,
writer thing?
I am always these days. I am just scrounging for whatever little time. So I will write it on anything that is near. I will write it on my child's hand. I think with that, you better like more, I guess disciplined writers probably have a really great way of doing this, and I am learning to do that more, because I try and just sit down and write them all out whenever I can. I get to the computer, and I just will try and get everything down that I can, even if it's from 2 to 4 in the morning. Get it down. You won't get any sleep that night. You'll be in a little pain the next day, but I do think it's worth it, to get it while it's fresh. So that much I have learned, and so I get it down on whatever I can as fast as I can, so it doesn't, because in from my senility, it's gone in another hour. I'll be like, "What was that? Who am I? What was I doing?"
So how does your desk look? I always have to follow that question up with this
Oh
question.
my gosh, I would show you. I just turned this around. I'll tell you, it's got about 18 pictures from my kids on it. It looks like a playroom. I mean, let's be honest. There's there's a there's one of my kids' old stuffed animals. There's a thing from a trip to Africa. There's a screenwriting book. There's an old script that I'm working on and trying
Oh
to get
yeah.
together. There's, always a cup of coffee off to the side here, bunch of old pens. Yeah. One quote from Chekhov that I don't know why just has followed me around. I think only because someone put it in a little frame. Once you put shit in a frame, I'll just keep it around. I
You
don't,
gotta
it's
hang
like
on. I figured you turn the computer the right way with the camera, just showing that like solid tall oak bookcase behind you as a
right, that's it.
no, this
Right.
is my
I've read all
office.
those.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
read every single one of
there's
the books several times.
some weed up there.
I do want to like go back to the acting thing for a quick pivot, but given the nature of what's happened in the last few years and the uncertainty of the arts industry in general, when did you figure out, hey, I don't have to be a bartender anymore? I can kind of live off of my earnings as an actor. Did that happen for you
Yeah.
later on,
Oh
or
man. I that it was a slow. It wasn't an exact moment, because it was like a slow process. I got this I got this little thing through Backstage. It was like uh, what was it? It was a Greek play, Pentheus, and a what is it called? I can't, the Iliad, the Iliad, the it's with the guy and the five women. Anyway, it's all gone. But anyway, I did this little play. It was a Greek play, and we went to Cyprus. And I gave up my bar job, which was like, I had one of those bar jobs in New York. It was the Mayflower Hotel. I got like at the I got like $16 an hour with um like vacation pay. It was a union job. So I was like this dude. I had
what?
paid vacation. I had health care. It was like a sweet job, and I was making bank at it. I was like, this is I mean, and I sort of knew it. I clocked it early. I was like, this is actually a really great job, and I am in danger of staying in this job and maybe not. So what I would do is in the middle of my job, I was like, I will never miss a fucking audition no matter what I do. And I know that this job pays, but I can get another job, but any audition could be the one. And if it's worth it, I'm going. So I would leave my I would leave my bar job. I don't recommend this at home for any other person in a bar job because it was helter skelter. But I literally had my bike parked right outside, and I would go to the bathroom. I'd be like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, everyone, and one of the waiters would fill in for me, and I would run around in my because I had to wear like a little like vest and a name tag and all that shit, and I would jump on my bike and like fly down to whatever it was because you can get around Manhattan pretty fast on a bike. Park it outside, go up in full like bartender regalia, and like do my audition, Shakespeare or whatever. In this case, it was like this Greek play, and then I would get back on my bike and I would go back to my bar job and get in there like sweaty and just be like, "Hey, who needs a drink?" Um, and that worked for a while, but my manager, who was nice, also was like, "Fuck no, you're gonna get fired, and I'm gonna fire you. I don't care, even if I like you." And so I really pushed the envelope with that, but I would never miss an audition. That was my thing.
Hmm.
And I finally got this little play that ended up going to Cyprus, and it was magical. And I gave up the bar job for like I think it was like 2 weeks, and I wasn't getting paid like much, a little bit. But when I got back, I was so resolved after that of that weird freedom from that bar job and just like actually being able to do what I love to do for a second that like I got super focused and clear about what I was doing and where I was going, and I was like I'm out of here. And it wasn't long after that that excuse me that I booked a little movie. That was I think it was Getting to Know You. I think I booked that. No, it wasn't that. I booked this movie with Rachel Lee Cook when she was like the shit at the time. I remember she was like the teen shit. Um, and uh, and and it was a little movie called Sally that I never really saw ever. I didn't see the movie. I didn't see it ever in theaters, but I did once find a video of it in the Netherlands, in just outside of Amsterdam, a different language that I bought. So I've watched pieces of it, but my voice was dubbed. But he was brilliant, whoever that guy was. Um, and we that was my first little movie, and I think that was the moment where I got just enough money to sort of scrap my way by, and then I never did it again. That was it. Um, that was just me managing to make my pennies go and work for me, and eating rice and beans was sort of what I lived off of for 3 years, and then doing these little theater gigs from here to there, and just not living on much but sort of getting by enough to just stay focused on this stuff. And it was a difficult time in terms of like if I had to do it now with kids, I'd be like fuck. But back in that time it was glorious. I loved it.
Yeah.
And it was really inspiring and really creative, and another time that I met just like some of the best friends and people that I've ever known. So I'm very thankful for that time, and all of those struggles were very helpful to sort of grow up a little bit and learn the ropes, and also learn how beautiful and valuable it is to work in this industry. I've never taken it for granted, um and I've always been just I've had a lot of just deep appreciation, gratitude for all the jobs, whether they were fancy or not. I just always feel very lucky to be working with all the other people, and I've always, like I said, I've always enjoyed the collaboration of it all, and it's so I love it, and I'm deeply thankful for it.
I'm so glad I asked you that because I'm in the same spot right now,
Right
and
on.
it's been 2 weeks since I worked there, and
Yeah,
I feel the same thing, that resolve, that clarity,
yeah,
working and meeting with crazy, creative, and fantastic people. So, hey, if that doesn't give myself and others hope, I don't know what will. just for the sake
That's
of
it.
finding happiness. You
Yeah,
know?
and, the happiness is always it's so relative because it's
Yeah.
like it it you work so hard for all of it, and even that bar job, yeah, this was a trick, man, and I figured it out a little too late in my run, but I think it's gold as far as, like, wisdom for young folks, like, that bar job in the beginning, I fucking I hated it. I thought it was the thing that was, like, keeping me from like, "Why do I have to have this? Why can't I just have what I want?" Um, and I sort of purposely, like, loathed it, and it became a really sort of negative thing for me that I was up against, and it became this weird sort of back and forth with this thing that I did every day, and it was a great job, and it was a lucky job, and it gave me so much, and it even let me sort of turn corners and get what I wanted. And I didn't really figure it out till really the end, and then I luckily got something that did get me, but I don't think it was by accident. It was I turned it, like, I, like, made a decision one day. I was like, fuck this. This job is great. I'm lucky, and I'm not gonna hate it anymore. I'm gonna actively love it. I'm gonna make myself love it. I'm gonna appreciate the people. I'm gonna appreciate every buck I make, and I'm gonna make it a really positive thing instead of just always feeling like it's my enemy. And I thought I had to do that to get out of it. And I realized that, and it was a big lesson in my life to, like, embrace those things, even if you want to be away from them and you don't want to be identified with it or defined by it. um and appreciate where you are and what you're doing, and that doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your focus. And as soon as I did that, like, the energy of my life changed, and I feel like I took so much energy off of hating it and all the negative stuff, and all of that became a sort of like more forward motion of, okay, so this is great, thank God for this thing, what can I do with the rest of my energy? And I had just a much more positive outlook on everything, and I think it changed my life, honestly. I think in the end it was like something that I really learned from, and I was like, this is how you approach stuff even when it isn't just exactly the way you want it. That doesn't mean it has to be you. It doesn't mean, like, that's who you are. It just means that that's a part of your life that you're doing now, and try and milk it for all it's worth. And the people in it, you never know who you're meeting. And I don't just mean that in, like, a business way. I just mean, like, you can miss so much by putting blinders on. And I found that you get so much more out of your life, period, if you just embrace it all. Just the people that are there, you just never know how they contribute to your life. And even people way outside of this business have helped me in my career in huge ways by teaching me those kind of lessons, or providing something else deep that you need as an actor, sort of going through all this stuff.
I mean, that's beautifully said, and I want to kind of top onto that too. Is there somebody in particular you remember that really like gave a lot to who you are today and your career even?
I mean, I would go back probably even before that bar. I would go back to, like, college. I don't know if I got that much out of. I mean, that's not true. I got a lot out of college, um, but it was mostly about the people. I'd say that's what I got the most out of. The lessons and stuff, you can almost get that anywhere. I mean, you can read the books. The teachers are amazing, and you're lucky to get great ones if you get great ones. But there's so much that you can get. But the people that I got to be around, and there was one who was not in this industry at all, didn't care a lick about theater. He was just a guy. This guy Aaron Tate. He's a philosopher guy, and he was my roommate. And he was he was the first person that was so dedicated to something. Like, he would stay up at night and read these reams of books that I couldn't get through the first 10 pages, but he would just study, study, study. And it wasn't because he was like, I need to get A's. It's because he had developed this work ethic for something that he loved. And, like, I saw this guy's work ethic and I was like, oh, that's that's how you work hard at something. I hadn't figured that out. Like, I knew it, like, jump shots, or I knew it, like, with baseball in a certain way. But it was so physical. Um and I watched this guy just sit in his room and, like, study these texts, and then he had a full life outside of it. That wasn't what all he was. He did all sorts of other stuff, but he had this little bookcase of books, and he went to it, and he worked, and he worked, and he worked, and he was passionate about it. And I watched him over the course of a year, and he's, still a dear friend. And I attribute that to him. I think I learned that from him, and it's something that I took, and I was like, that's how you work hard at something. So if it's a play, that's how you work at it. If it's your sides for your commercial thing or your whatever you're doing, that's how you work at it. And there's a laser beam of focus on it, and it allows you to really invest yourself in it, and it's not wishy-washy. And I think that goes for writing. It goes for everything. I think it goes for your relationships, it goes for whatever you're doing in your life. There's a way to sort of be present and focused on what you're doing unapologetically, and it gives to your life. And that doesn't mean you have to be a Daniel Day-Lewis and go sit in a corner and do that magical thing that he does. But it allows you the sort of space to really engage with something shamelessly and fully and passionately, and go after what you love, and really get it. It's when I started really reading, like, I don't know, back then it was like Shakespeare or something like that, but I read everything, and I learned it, and I got it, and it got in my bones. And yeah, so that's what I'd say. Someone like that, totally out of
Yeah.
the sphere of what we do, um, but a great person that changed my life.
This is actually I'm gonna switch things around a little bit because this goes really well with everything you just said. If you have any advice you could give to the listeners here, usually they're people in the arts industry,
Hmm.
but it could be for anything. Do you have a piece of advice that maybe you personally hang on to that you can kind of bestow upon them?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably of those last two things are pillars of what I work off of, sort of, unconsciously, which is, in this thing, I think there's a resilience that you need to develop, whether that's a muscle or thick skin or whatever you call it. It's like you have to somehow, and that means even, you know, even if you're the most famous, or like in my moments when, like, the most heat is on your career, or when everyone's excited about the last thing you did or something like that, you have to still you have to have this resilience, I think, in you, of what you are personally, of who you are, of what matters to you, and getting clear about that at a young age, and getting, and it will change, it will grow, it'll become something else. But I think finding what your sort of backbone of who you are, and doing that in your life every day, I think that's what I would say. As like, dig for that, and clear out, excavate that, and make it important. And I think that will give you a touchstone. That'll give you something to, like, go back to in these moments where this career or anything that you're doing just offers you those hurdles. And then I guess on the same side of that is that the pain of all of it, like, the struggles of being a poor actor in New York, or getting rejected 20 times in a row for things that you were perfect for, or having your worst breakup in the world, and you're lost, and you have no direction, and you have no compass on what's important. All of that stuff, I have found in my life, the absolute grittiest, hardest nuggets of pain to crack, um, have been the things that have made my creative life bigger, better, more, you know, press the boundaries out to the spectrum, and just given me that resilience to go back in and know that I can take those hits like a boxer, um, and that I'm actually not just taking hits. I'm growing. Like, I'm actually, that pain in its moment is growth. It's like actual learning. It is your body developing, and that has allowed me to take those moments of insecurity or not knowing what's coming next, and I still have them all the time, in all areas of life, like, to just process them in a different way, so it's not negative, so it's not something I beat myself up for, and it's not something that I have shame about. It's not something that I need to react on to someone else. It's not something that I have to hate my fellow actors and compete with them. It's not. I can love everyone else in what I do truly, and myself as well, and sort of do it and still go through those things of pain and know that it's growth. And that has helped me. It's helped my marriage, my fatherhood, my friendships, and definitely my career.
I agree with all of it, and I can personally like just absorb everything you just said.
Yeah, right on, man.
Especially the
Yeah.
pain part of it. As creative, even if you're not creative, that's incredibly important to hang on
And you
to.
have to have pain. I mean,
Yeah,
because you love it and you want it and you want to be a part of it, and you have this potential that's unrealized or uncapped, unpopped, and you all of that stuff is that's going somewhere. That's energy, and it can be used in such a positive way, and I've seen it in my life and so many of my other friends, like as they've gone through their careers, and one person's path goes like this, and then suddenly the other guy shoots up like that, and everyone's just going, and there's no competition in it. There's no looking at each other doing. There's just all of us sort of doing our lives, and I think that in this industry is really hard to keep your focus on, but it's really, really important. And that pain is okay, that you can't, like, if you think that there's something wrong with you, it can really take you out,
yeah,
and there's a lot of it in different ways in life, period. And I feel like that's something to that I think that we could re-identify in our world a little bit, and just be
yeah,
like, it's not pain isn't really a negative thing. It's part of the course of how we get from point A to point B. And it's just not always happy or pretty or perfect. It's human and it's full.
yeah. Well, speaking of human nature and pain incarnate, or comedy incarnate, this is probably my favorite thing I ask on the show, and that's to ask you for a party story. It's not necessarily a story that happened at a party, but something that you can recount every single moment of that made some kind of impact on your memory throughout your career that you could easily recant at a party amongst friends. Do you have something like that? It could be like failed auditions, it could be crazy jobs you've done, just like anything that stands out.
Gosh. I mean, I have so many like ridiculous moments to my life. I don't really know. I mean, let's see. Party, party. I mean, I don't know. That's a tough one for me. I have probably they're not all like really appropriate.
I mean, names redacted. Nothing
Yeah,
is.
I'm trying to think of like how to like navigate this one exactly, without incriminating me and all my friends. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can come back to that one, and I can just something will come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, are you like talking like party, like industry kind of parties, or just
I
like
mean, could be industry. We've had people talk about stuff that's happened like on a hike or something on vacation that they
right?
will never forget. So those kind of
Yeah,
things have been talked about. It's mainly been industry because this industry is so
right.
insane.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I don't know if I've had. I mean, the I remember the first time I was up at Sundance, and this isn't like a crazy funny story, but I remember the first time I was up at Sundance. It was the first time that I'd actually been a part of like the sort of parties of this industry. Like the first time I'd actually been like, oh, there's a rope and I'm gonna wait in that line and go into this shishi thing, and everyone's in there, and all the actors that I love are a part of this. And I remember being up at those parties as a it was a world, like a little whirlwind. Like I had my best high school friend up there, and we were just sort of walking around to these parties, like from one to the next. And it was the first sort of taste of like real Hollywood stuff that I'd ever had. And I was such a like a, staunch New Yorker, and we were in the like hills of Park City up there, and it's like snowing, and we're all walking around. And I just remember how magical all that was, actually. Like there were hot tubs involved and crazy drunkenness. And I think I like, I fell in love with this girl for like 3 nights, and we like got a divorce. And like packed my bag and left her house and met another girl, and like, I mean, it was just like a whirlwind of just like condensed life in like this one like 10-day period that I was up there or whatever it was. But but I remember that I had some high school I had two high school friends up there, one who had a movie up there, and then my buddy Jess, who sort of is like always been a sort of part of my life. And yeah, I just remember being up there with him and sort of sitting up there. We were having like a cigarette outside this hot tub with these girls, and we were just sitting up there and being like, "Oh man, this is a whole side of life that we have never experienced, that we never really thought we would be a part of, but it's all just here." And I just remember the juxtaposition of my life before that, and that being like one of those little turning points as we're sort of sitting up there in the snowy mountains and everything had sort of happened already. And just just sitting in the sort of crux of that life moment, and being right on the sort of precipice of, I guess, the rest of my career. And also sort of the nostalgia of my past with my high school buddies sort of there experiencing it all with me, and we both had sort of big eyes of wonder at the whole thing. And just like, yeah, just sitting there and having that moment of like, wow, this is, something's happening right now and I have no idea what it is. And I remember that moment. I sort of like, it passes through my subconscious, every so often. And yeah, that's maybe my party story.
I will gladly take that. 'Cause
Okay, cool.
having having been to Sundance a few times myself, I know exactly what you're talking about,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
never like it's always surreal. you
yeah,
know?
there's a reality to it all, and like you see yourself sort of, it marks time somewhere. I don't know those
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Ethan Hawke just walks by with like
Yeah,
a
there's the
Diet Coke.
casual sort of walking by of your heroes, and then there's also like you're a part of this sort of other thing, and then it's also so removed from everything. And back that was
Yeah.
sort of the heyday of Sundance, so it was, I mean, it was just like a nonstop sort of like, station to station party. You just walk up a block and you're in another party, you're in another party, and all of it was just like this, yeah, just whirlwind of just craziness and fun. And yeah, I just remember sitting there in just a moment of calm, being like, "Oh shit, here we go."
That's so cool, man.
Yeah,
I'm glad you hang on to that memory because those are really important.
yeah, for
Just
sure.
I say that like I've been alive for 100 years, but you
But you
know,
know it because you have
yeah,
them in your life in different way. There's so many of those little moments,
mhm,
but yeah, they're important to sort of mark your time, and also just to reflect. I mean, for me to reflect back on and just be like, it's a journey. Like, all this is a journey to me. It's all
yeah,
just, it's so filled with so many things, and for some of it's career, and then suddenly I fell in love with my wife. I wasn't meaning to, but there it was. And and we've had this just wonderful relationship, and we have these great kids, and that suddenly took over my entire life, and it was much more important than anything else. Like, it was more important than my biggest, deepest passion, which is acting and writing. And when I had my kids, I really struggled, still, I mean, honestly struggle with how to balance all that out, because it was, so when you're single, or when at least even when we were together, my wife's a singer, and she has her own very, sort of wonderful career and process that she goes about. She's just one of the most creative, sort of wonderful creative humans that I know. Um, and she has her own thing, and so together we were like Nick and Nack. She could go do her tours, and I'd go do my movies and TV or whatever, and we'd sort of circle back and we'd be with each other. It was this great, sort of give and take, and I'd go on tour with her and she'd come see my thing and whatever. um and now, we have kids, and that's everything. It just becomes everything in a way that I never could have predicted, even though everyone was like, come on, what are you thinking? um no idea how much I would, one, love it, and also just how demanding it all is. And so balancing those passions out, and like, there's no quantifying it. My kids are number one. And but sort of learning how to have a career in and around that is fucking hard for me. Some people do great, but for me, I like to be a part of everything that's going on. And so, it's really hard for me to miss their thing or not be a part of their whatever. And so I'm often trying to like figure out how to schlep everyone to this place, and we're all going to go to be and do this thing together, and you guys come up to Vancouver and we'll live there through the pandemic. We went up to I did this show Home Before Dark, and we like we were meant to go to like Vancouver for 5 months before the pandemic, and I was like, all right, let's go, you guys, we'll go. And so everyone came up with me, and then the pandemic hit, and then we just lived up there for like 2 years, which was glorious. It was awesome. But that's our sort of weird life, and I try and bring my family wherever because I love having them around. They're all going to be in
Yeah.
school soon. I won't get that, so we'll see.
I love that you can do that too. It's not some kind of like what 1% celebrity fable where they just fly their family. Like you can actually do that and
Oh
bring your
yeah.
family with you.
Oh, it's the best.
That's
It's the
so
best. I was
cool.
just on this thing, and like two of the other cast members had babies, and we were all in our little bubble together up there in Vancouver. Um, and like I have my kids are like 6 and 4, and they just had their little babies, and one of them has another kid, and it was just like, oh, it was so much fun. And then we're making this great TV show that we all love doing every day,
Yeah.
and doing together, and it was really fun. It was sort of like almost a romantic time as far as like that
Yeah.
is, because we were just like, it was so surreal. Like these last 2 years are so surreal to me. They're crazy, and that they were our little like little bubble in all of this, and it
Yeah.
was yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's weird how now it's suggested, oh, we're you're back to normal, but those last 2 years counted. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I
But
still am like, what the fuck just happened? Who
yeah,
are we? Like what?
they're like,
We got back to LA, and I was like, huh?
yeah.
Like I live here? I forgot that I lived here. I forgot that I had a house here, and like, oh my gosh. I mean, it was really weird. We were up there for so long, and I think that yeah, these last 2 years on everyone has just been, I mean, yeah, we're still sort of like going through it all, piecing through it
Yeah.
all, be like, oh yeah, what does this mean now?
That's the beauty of where we are right now, time wise, and
Yeah.
creatively, it can only like fuel us, right? When
Yeah,
it
I
comes
think
to
so.
writing.
I mean,
Yeah,
I think so. I think there's a lot, the world is a crazy place right now. And so yeah, there's a lot of meat and potatoes out there. We'll see.
which we'll get into for a part two.
Okay.
Maybe. But I do want to. I'll wrap up here. I do want to
Sure.
ask you before we close out the recording. Is
Yeah.
there anything that I can promote with this episode? Whether it's a project you're doing, a charity organization you really care about, just anything you want me to give a shout out.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so much. I mean, my wife is working, and me too, on sort of diversity in sort of all areas of her life. She's half Korean, and so that is a big part of our life. So show love and find your way into making that a big part of your creative life. And I think it's a great welcoming of our entire world, that we can all work together with all of our different selves, and accommodate each other's big traditions, personalities, and all of who we are. So I think that that's a big turn in the business, through gender, through race and ethnicities, and all our different cultural sort of coming together. So that's a hugely important thing to me in my life, and to hopefully all of us. And yeah, and then I'm about to do this movie Bark. It's a really cool film, and that's the one I'm going to do in Germany for a little while. So we'll see where that all goes. But if you
Oh
see that
man.
come down the pipeline, keep your eye out for it.
Oh yeah, I'm going to be sharing the hell out of
Yeah,
that. Especially growing up on pathology, I got to as a
yeah,
kid.
that's right. I love that. That's so awesome.
Dude, this has been an incredible like chat. Honestly, I have one closeout before I stop the
Sure.
recording here. If you wouldn't mind sticking around after that,
Yeah.
but I just want to say thank you.
Thank
From
you, man. Thanks for reaching out. It's a pleasure
yeah,
talking to you,
of
and sharing
course.
all this stuff. I
Yeah, you
wish
made
you guys and your audience all the best.
a chubby 15-year-old boy very happy today, which doesn't sound as awkward as it sounds,
You made a
listeners.
chubby 48-year-old man
That's
very happy. So thank you.
well, man. I'm get you have to have seen Wayne's World, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, all right. So I close
That's
out
like an
every record.
ancient, like, those that's like ancient text to you, but right, it's like,
Oh,
I grew up on
okay.
this
I yeah. I all right. I will
shit.
admit I just turned 30 this year, so I've reached another hump in my succession.
I
But
thought you were saying you were 15. You look like you're
oh,
15, you know? You're very
Really?
well preserved.
That's why my agents don't know what to do with me. Like, you look
You look
15, but you
great.
sound
Yeah,
30.
right, yeah, right.
Thanks,
No,
dude.
that's great. You
Um,
could still be playing high school. That's what I
hey,
was through a big chunk of my career. I was like 28 or 9, and I was still playing like 18, 17, and,
oh yeah,
I'd be amongst, like, teenagers, but I was also, like, way older, and it was both fun and weird.
even like seeing you in Garden State, you could tell like, oh yeah, dude, you could still you
Right,
could do
right,
some
right, right.
21 Jump Street type stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
exactly.
the reason I asked, man, is I close out every recording with a Wayne's World awkward goodbye. So
Okay.
essentially, I do a silent countdown, and when I point to you, just give me your best verbal or nonverbal. Sometimes that works too. Awkward goodbye, and then I'll stop the recording. You think
Okay.
you could be awkward?
Yeah, I think so. Let's try.
All right, man. Here we go. In.
It was so it's great to talk to you. Well, call me, or I'll call you. You call me.